And we're preparing to live stream, setting up for our custom streaming service. And we're live.
We are live. All right. Good afternoon, environmental subcommittee members. Thanks for joining our meeting. The agenda has three bills, three departmental bills. We're just going to talk about them. We won't be voting on anything, but just reviewing them and answering any questions that anyone might have. And two of the three are from MDE. So welcome to Alex and Jeremy. And let's see, with that, I mean, the first bill is like really straightforward. So from OAG, Kristen, you want to just explain what that one does?
Sure, this is House Bill 218, and it is altering the reporting date. It's moving the date by which the Attorney General must submit an annual report on the activities of the Environment and Natural Resources Crime Unit and actions taken by the Maryland Department of the Environment or Department of Natural Resources in response to findings and recommendations of the unit. It is moving the date from November 30th to October 1st, and that's intending to align with other reporting requirements that the MDE's annual report covering enforcement activities and compliance states. So this is just basically a bill to streamline reporting.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about that?
Nope.
All right. Why don't we move on to House Bill 250? Kristen, if you could.
Yes, I will.
What that one does.
Sure thing.
A little bit, not necessarily complicated, but a little bit more involved.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's authorizing MDE to impose an administrative penalty for a violation of provisions of the environment article relating to the appropriation or use of waters, reservoirs, and dams, as well as wetlands and riparian rights. The bill also expands MDE's authorization to use administrative orders for violations related to waterway construction and dam safety, standardizes related administrative notice and hearing procedures, and specifies that under existing civil penalty provisions relating to wetland and riparian rights violations, each day is a separate violation. And with respect to the, authorizing MDE to impose administrative penalties, it's a similar authority that MDE currently has for enforcement activities of other provisions under their environment article.
Thanks, Kristen. And Jeremy and Alex, just looking at your letter of support, this is by authorizing administrative enforcement mechanisms. You describe this as a middle ground enforcement tool. Is that right? Jeremy or Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. As Kristen said, that's something that we have pretty much out everywhere else in the environment article. And so currently in those three areas, we either have to just send a letter asking them not to violate again, or we have to file in civil court, which for minor violations is just not worth it.
Right. Okay. And the criteria that are spelled out in the bill for the type of or the amount of penalty, I mean, that's similar to
It's modeled after current law. The considerations, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have any questions about this bill? All right. Well, then let's go to our third and last bill, House Bill 252, lead paint abatement services.
Folder. Yeah. Folder's empty. Well, so basically this is a departmental bill that is authorizing MDE to adopt regulations to establish insurance and performance bond requirements for lead abatement services. I'm just going to bring up my notes because I didn't have them in a hard copy right here. So I think that's basically it, but let me just check in.
Yeah, through a performance bond or liability insurance.
Yeah, so right. Yeah.
And I guess the question, well, let's see, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, go ahead.
And what is the problem that we're going after here? Are there folks that I remember part of the hearing, there are folks that are allegedly working on lead abatement, but then really aren't working on it? Is that what we're?
Alex or Jeremy, you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a good question, Delegate. So over the past couple of years, our lead program unfortunately had to invalidate a couple thousand inspections that were either done negligently or even fraudulently. And there was one criminal case that was pursued, and the person ended up taking a plea bargain and not receiving any jail time. But basically, the folks who had their lead property inspections done got those lead property inspections thrown out, and then they were on the hook to pay for a replacement inspection. So all this bill would do would require MDE to develop regulations so that we could have an insurance or bonding requirement and hold those folks accountable when they get those inspections wrong and they get thrown out.
Okay, so in the meantime, these folks either have to pay for another lead inspection, or they may have to remediate in some case, and still people are exposed to potential lead hazards.
That's correct, Delegate. And, we are aware of the 2,000 or so cases that we invalidated, 3 children who lived in those properties who did have lead poisoning. And so they're on the hook for another inspection. They could go to small claims court, but it's really not an effective remedy because it takes too long.
Right. In this case, it's more about like protecting those kids and yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Delegate Morgan?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jeremy, real quick question. In this, or Krista, maybe you can help me too. In this bill, is there a licensing requirement for small business to be able to do this?
So there's currently there's an accreditation requirement to provide lead paint abatement services. And so this would allow the department to also require insurance or collect a performance bond for those types of service providers.
So the service provider, if I'm hearing you correctly, would have to take out a performance bond for so much money in order to be able to conduct those inspections.
That would be determined by MDE by regulation.
Okay, then
It
Jeremy, I'll go to
gives
you.
MDE the authority to establish those requirements.
So Jeremy, going over to MDE, does that mean that the small business would have to take out a performance bond for how much money? And does that then play into their licensing requirement?
It's a good question, Delegate. So, that will all be kind of determined through the regulatory process. And that's the point of the bill, rather than prescribe it in statute, is to allow that regulatory process to have the stakeholder engagement from the lead abatement professionals. We have been speaking with Maryland Insurance Administration about what the insurance market could look like, and thinking about propping up a state-sponsored insurance modeled after the Maryland auto insurance fraud system, as well as the option for private insurance. And so that will hopefully be worked out in the regulations. I will say that a lot of these contractors, lead abatement professionals, are also licensed contractors who also have, insurance requirements. So it's not a totally new requirement for some of those professionals.
But it could be an add-on requirement, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yes, sir.
And then we pass the bill per se, and then MDE sort of defines the guidelines and rules about how you're going to play, rather than defining it up front so everybody knows in the legislature what we're trying to do.
That's one way to look at it, Delegate. I think we're hoping to have a back and forth with the industry in developing the regulations, obviously the notice and comment period, and kind of the back and forth stakeholder engagement, rather than trying to figure out all of the details during the pressure of session.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Holmes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this for lead abatement services? In other words, persons who actually remove the lead, or is this for the lead inspection services? Companies who go out and certify that there is or is not lead, abatement or inspection?
Abatement.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Delegate Frazier-Dago?
Jeremy, you brought up, and I wanted to just clarify in my head, you were talking about you had conversations with MIA about potentially standing up a similar program to the Maryland Insurance, and you had mentioned fraud. Are you talking about the MAIF, Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, or are you talking about that? Are you talking about MAIF, like having like a MAIF one, or are you talking about something else? I just was a little unclear.
Yeah, we're thinking about a two-pronged approach where somebody can go out and explore the private insurance market, or they could pay into a fund similar to MAIF.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, and Jeremy, just to follow up on the issue of fraud that Delegate Fraser-Dago brought up, and I think MMHA raised this at the hearing as well. Is the insurance that is to be taken out to cover not just negligence but fraud? In which case, I remember there was a little bit of discussion saying that liability insurance typically wouldn't cover fraud, but maybe a performance bond would. But is that your intention that fraud, not just negligence, be covered by this bond or insurance?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So that I guess, and there's no need to specify that in the bill, because do you think the language in the bill saying requirements, for any person who's accredited to be covered by blah, 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 you think that fraud, not just negligence, is implied there?
We believe so. I guess the way it's written, that could be, a topic of discussion during the regulatory process, but it is our intention to have the fraud covered as well. That would be our preference.
Okay. Delegate Fraser-Dago?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll lower it. Well, the one thing I would say is that it sounds like it makes sense to pitch it to you all to, promulgate the regs and work it all out as opposed to us. Because it's going to get complicated. It's, the insurance stuff is, I dealt with it over at ECM and it's a lot more complicated than people think it is. So makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about this bill? All right. Well, then I think we are done. And Kristen, just correct me. There's just these three bills, right? So just to review. So
Right, correct.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for a speedy meeting, and we will talk again soon. And thanks to MDE.
Thanks.
Have a